morning, Ms. September. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Thank you. Are you ready?
Yes, we are, Chair. Before we begin, there are legal representatives who may wish to introduce themselves for the record, and with your leave, my request that they do so.
Yes, let them do so. Thank you.
Morning, Chair. My name is
Good
Johan
morning.
Ekstein of BDK Attorneys. We're here to represent the former National Commissioner of the Police, Lieutenant General Paslani.
Yes.
I also would like to place on record, Chair, that we have submitted an affidavit to the Commission regarding the allegations which he might be implicated on.
Yes.
And the hard copy was also delivered per hand this morning to the Commission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. I think I didn't give you a chance to
That is
introduce yourself.
that is
There was
so, Chair.
no time. Yes, thank
yes,
you.
it's Bapasilem Timuye from Bapasilem Timuye Attorneys.
Yes.
I'm appearing on behalf of General Zulu. At this stage, we haven't filed an affidavit. We just have her rights reserved at the moment.
Yes, okay. That's
you,
fine.
Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge. My name is Manik Law, initial R. I'm an attorney from KZN Durban. I am instructed by General Piega.
Yes.
Judge, we have not submitted an affidavit as yet, but there has been an indication that the General will reserve her rights to either cross-examine or testify in the proceedings.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
I guess you mean she will reserve the right to apply for leave to cross-examine,
If necessary. Thank you, Judge.
not for the right to cross-examine.
No, the
Okay, all right.
application for leave to cross-examine.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you,
okay.
Judge.
I understand. Are you ready?
Yes, we are, Chair. Chair, the evidence that we are presenting today is that of Mr. Kobus Rulosa. He is a member of the South African Police Service, the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation. The evidence that he presents falls within his personal experience as an investigator over the years, but specific to certain investigations that he's led. The nature of his evidence falls within the terms of reference 1.9, in that his evidence interrogates transactions and benefits that relate to the South African Police Services Secret Services account. Chair, before you, you have one bundle. The bundle, with your leave, in order of priority, in order of sequence rather, has been marked KK 2.1. It consists of the main affidavit and annexures to the affidavit.
The liver arch file containing the affidavit of Mr. Kobus de Meyer Rulufse and annexures will be marked exhibit KK 2.1.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we have 3 additional bundles, but one lever arch bundle. In fact, let me correct myself. We have 3 additional bundles, 2 of which are reference bundles. The legal team has taken the liberty to compile one bundle, which constitutes legislation, some regulatory framework, and case law that this evidence refers to in his affidavit. And the other bundle is a bundle of diagrams, which has been prepared to assist in the facilitation of this evidence. The last additional bundle, which is marked again, by your leave, KK 2.2 is in fact a supplementary affidavit that this witness has provided, and the purpose of the witness talks specifically to key individuals that are mentioned in his main affidavit. The witness, through his evidence, will address you on that when so necessary. And that particular affidavit encloses a sealed bag which contains a list of names. With your leave, may I hand this up to you?
Yes.
Thank you.
What is K 2.4? Just the regulatory framework.
And case law bundle, yes, Chair.
Doesn't contain his supplementary statement.
No, Chair, it doesn't. In the little soft file, there are two of those soft files. The one which is marked by your leave KK 2.2 is the supplementary affidavit with the brown sealed envelope.
What did you say the purpose of the supplementary affidavit is, insofar as if it's not something you are not supposed to state publicly?
Chair, that particular affidavit was prepared by the witness in that there are certain...
Okay, I see paragraph 4 deals with what the purpose of the affidavit, supplementary affidavit is. Okay, but do you want to talk to that?
Yes, Chair, the witness will in fact talk to it. Do you need me to
No, I
address
think
you on it?
you want to confirm the purpose of the supplementary affidavit.
Yes, Chair. The purpose of the supplementary affidavit is that it concerns the protection of the identities of certain individuals who may still be working as agents within crime intelligence of SAPS. The affidavit, which attaches the sealed envelope, the sealed envelope contains a list of names, alongside which numbers have been allocated. The main affidavit of this witness, therefore, does not refer to the identities of these individuals, but only to the numbers as indicated on the list itself.
Okay, let's just clarify that. Is the position the following? That in the course of his evidence, Mr. Rudolphs will not use the true names of certain people for certain reasons, but has allocated those people numbers. So there may be Peter that he will decide not to call Peter, but will call by a number. He might refer to I don't know whether Mr. 1 or Mr. 2 or Mr. number 2, Mr. number 20, Miss number 15. Is that what's going to happen?
Yes.
So as not to divulge their names.
Yes, Chair.
But those names, he knows the true names, and those names are in the sealed envelope that you have given to me, not envelope file. Is that right?
Yes, Chair.
This one.
Yes, Chair.
And ultimately, if I open here, I will find certain names and a number.
Yes, Chair.
And when I want to know who he was referring to, when in his evidence he referred to Miss 15, for example, and I will find 15 and I'll find a name that to which 15 is assigned.
Yes, Chair.
And then I will know that that's the person he was talking about.
Yes, Chair.
That's what you are saying.
Yes, Chair.
And the reasons for not divulging that, is that something you are going to deal with during his evidence?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
And just for accuracy, the numbers are preceded by the letters F, M. That was a choice of the witness
Yeah,
himself.
for all the numbers.
For all the numbers. So, for
Yeah,
example,
it would be FM1, FM2, and so on.
Correct, Chair.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Now, do you want me to make any order with regard to this exhibit?
Yes, Chair.
What order?
The request is that by virtue of the sensitivity of the list of names, the names not be placed in the public domain for public consumption. Steps have, however, are being taken by the Commission to establish to what extent some of those names may be put into the public domain, but there's no clarity around that at this stage.
Okay, let's complete the scenario. The non-disclosure of the true names of some of the individuals to which his evidence will relate is at this stage provisional,
Correct, Chair.
pending establishing certain information. And once that information has been established, then I will be approached either to lift the order of secrecy, as it were, or to make it final.
Correct, Chair.
Yes, okay,
As it pleases.
okay. Are you done?
In accordance with that, bearing in mind that I do not even have a copy of the list of names, I've been informed that redactions have taken place in the annexures to his statement for the very same reason of not disclosing the identities.
Yes, okay.
Chair, the next point that I need to bring to your attention is that the evidence of this particular witness required declassification of documents. And all the documents that have been requested for declassification was done, apart from one document. And I'm obliged to bring this to you.
Excuse me.
I'm obliged
So declassification was effected in regard to all documents except one.
Correct, Chair.
Okay.
In my obligation to you, it was by agreement between the Commission and the National Commissioner of Police that this one document is presented for your eyes only, but subject to certain conditions and requirements, which was communicated to them in a letter sent to the National Commission on the 13th of September, and with your leave I need to place it on record. The letter which was sent to them informed that on the 16th of August 2019, the Commission agreed with the SAP's proposal on the disclosure of the sealed documents in unredacted format to be placed in a sealed envelope before the chairperson of the Commission. The SAPS appreciates that the disclosure of the sealed documents does not in any way detract from the witness giving evidence in relation to the sealed documents or its contents. The agreed form of disclosure of the sealed documents themselves will not in any way detract from testimony being delivered on the contents of the sealed documents for admission as evidence and due consideration. The sealed documents will be declassified accordingly, and it was on 22nd August 2019 that the sealed documents were hand-delivered to the Commission, although not declassified accordingly, and no reasons were provided. So as a consequence of that...
Is the process of declassification still pending?
In relation to the sealed document?
In regard to the
Chair.
document?
It is understood that they have provided the document, but for your eyes only, Chair. The witness is not prevented or precluded from giving evidence in relation to the document, but it's the document itself
Yeah,
that
but
cannot
what I want
be
to find out
disclosed.
is whether a request for disclassification was done and it is still pending, or it was done and the request has been turned down, or what is the position? Or was the request, no such request was ever made?
It's our understanding that the request for declassification was done.
And what's the outcome? What was the outcome?
The document was not declassified for public consumption. It was only to be provided to you in a sealed envelope, Chair.
Was the request declined? Was the request approved? Was the request partially approved?
The request was, it's a bit of an anomaly, Chair, with respect to the discussions that were had, in that it's understood that the document has not been declassified as such.
Yes, but did the legal team find out why it was not, why the request was not approved for declassification?
No reasons were given, Chair.
Yes, but
And-
it's the legal team which must ask for reasons. If you don't ask for reasons, you won't get reasons.
As it pleases, Chair, I'm happy to stand this point down
Yeah,
until such time that reasons are once again sought from
yes.
the South African Police Services
I-
in relation to it.
Except for really maybe extreme cases, I'm not so inclined to see information that I may not share with the public. If we have to have that situation, it must really be a compelling situation, because decisions that I make, I must justify them publicly. I'm not saying that there can never be a situation where it would be justified to have a situation where I'm the only one who sees certain information, but I would like to reserve that for very rare cases. So you can raise that issue after you have found out exactly what happened.
As it pleases, Chair.
Yeah.
Chair, there's one other point that I need to bring to your attention, and that is the second annexure to this witness's statement is an affidavit by a Colonel Jacobus Johannes Hendrik Roos.
What's the surname?
Roos.
Uh-huh.
R-O-O-S, for the record. It's a 5-page affidavit It was deposed to on the 6th of November 2013. With your leave, Chair, although the Colonel Roos has informed our investigation team that he is available to give evidence should the chairperson so wish, it's requested that his affidavit be submitted as evidence. In accordance with that, we have sent out Rule 3.3 notices. They're not only in relation to Mr. Roelof's affidavit, but also in relation to Mr. Roos's affidavit. In this regard, if I can just quickly alert you, Chair, to the 3.3 notices that were sent.
Yes, why are we dealing with that now? Because Mr. Roos might be called later, isn't it?
As it pleases, Chair.
Yes. If this witness has need to refer to the affidavit, he can refer to the affidavit for what it's worth. But if you are going to call the witness later, let's deal with that later.
We'll be guided by your direction on that, Chair. There were 53 Rule 3.3 notices that were sent in respect of both Mr. Roelof's affidavit and Mr. Roos's affidavit. 49 of those notices to date have been sent and received, 12 of which was short of a 14-day period, but nonetheless have in fact been received.
How much short of the 14-day period?
3 of the notices were sent 13 days before the time. 2 of the notices were sent 12 days before the time. 4 notices were sent 11 days before the time. And 1 notice was sent on 8 days before the time, 1 notice 7 days before the time, and 4 days before the time. The 4-day notice period, though, was consequent upon a delay of receipt of the actual notice, which was originally sent out in time. But at some stage, there was a failure on the email that was sent, and it was subsequently discovered that the company, which is LLVS Trading Services, has since been deregistered. So accordingly, the notices were then sent to the last referenced directors of that company.
Well, the notices to some of the people was very short, 4 days. Do they know that Mr. Roelofse is giving evidence today?
Yes, Chair. They've all been notified. The responses that we have received outside of Major General Pashlani, whose representative is here, is letters and emails received from Colonel Kimba.
Yeah, no, you don't have to give me 49 or more names.
No problem.
It depends what the point is you want to make. I'm concerned simply about the 4 days and I think 8 days or something.
Chair,
They know that he is giving evidence today.
Chair, they've all received the notices, so they are all fully aware that he is giving evidence today. In line with Rule 3.3, it is our submission, though, that the notices have been given within a reasonable period of time in order for them to address any concerns and prepare to either be here or to take the necessary steps proceeding forward.
Okay, all right.
I do have to, however, address the 1 notice that has not been received at all. Chair, that notice relates to a General Chris Obo. His evidence in the context, or rather this witness gives evidence in relation to this particular gentleman when he was the acting Deputy Commissioner of Crime Intelligence. I understand that extensive steps and measures have been taken by the investigators to try to trace General Chris Obo. Unfortunately, to no avail. Some of the steps that have been taken are they've contacted senior officials within crime intelligence and DPCI. They've contacted DIRCO. They've searched all social media platforms. They've addressed platforms of the Home Affairs. It was established that his wife is an employee of SARS, and they've tried several occasions to try to contact his wife, but to no avail. And I understand from the investigators that as late as last night, they were still trying to call numbers for his wife, but none of which have been successful. In relation to the searches that have been done on Mr. General Chris Obo, there were at least 70 numbers dating back a few years that they have contacted in trying to establish his whereabouts. He is no longer on the SABC system, and so there has certainly been no joy in trying to trace him. And this search has been continuing for about over 3 weeks, which even started before Mr. Roelofse's affidavit was signed off on the 27th of August. The only thing I need to bring to your attention, Chair, is that they have not yet gone out to an address that they have. There is no clarity, certainty, verification that this address is in fact the address of General Chris Obo, save for physically going out to an address that they found every other possible steps have been taken.
Okay.
And in this regard, our submissions are as follows. We accept that the Rule 3.3 was not sent. We submit that Rule 3.3 impresses an object and a purpose to protect the rights of persons who are or may be implicated. But however, in affording such protection, Chair, we submit that the work of the Commission must also be safeguarded and should not be overlooked. It is respectfully submitted that this proposition is supported when one reads Rule 3.3 with Rule 11.2. And Rule 3.3, as Chair would know, requires that where the evidence of a witness implicates or may implicate, reasonable notice needs to be provided.
Yes.
However,
It's fine. You have told me what efforts have been made to try and see where he could be served. We can proceed. If contact is made with him, he may apply for such relief as may address his concern that he didn't get the Rule 3.3 notice because it would appear that extensive steps were tried to try and locate him for purposes of serving the Rule 3.3 notice. Yes, are you done?
and then lastly, Chair, we've received correspondence as early as this morning in relation to certain individuals who has requested that the evidence of this witness be postponed because they believe that they require more time in order to prepare for this hearing today. Having said that, there are 4 individuals which form part of the Richard Mdluli family, and that includes Richard Mdluli himself, Ms. Vusiwane Mdluli, Busisiwe Mdluli, and Teresa Lyons. The communication that we received this morning requested that the evidence be postponed in respect of them, but it's our submission, Chair, that time is notice has been given. No, Chair, none whatsoever.
Okay.
In fact, the other requests for postponement of the evidences by other individuals is also not supported by any substantive application.
Yes.
And then with your leave, if I may request that the witness please be sworn in. unless there's anything else you wish me to address.
Legal representatives of certain affected parties. I haven't picked up anything that Ms. September said in respect of which you might wish to say anything. But if there is, you must just indicate that there is something to which you want to react. I don't see any indication. Okay, all right. Please administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Kobus de Meyer Rolofse?
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. Before we proceed, the file marked Exhibit KK 2.2 which has a sealed envelope and a written supplementary affidavit and annexures of Kobus de Meyer Rolofse is not to be made public at this stage until I decide otherwise. And is to be kept separate from the other files. To minimize any chances that unauthorized persons may have access to it. And then, Ms. September, there is this other file, KK23,
Yes,
diagrams. Those are diagrams relating to certain structures.
Yes, Chair. In fact, the diagrams have been prepared to assist with the facilitation of presenting the evidence of Mr. Rolofse, and
Yes.
it's been prepared by Mr. Rolofse's consent and instruction, which
Yes.
aligns to his evidence in the affidavit.
The file containing diagrams, written Exhibit KK 2.3, will be marked KK Exhibit KK 2.3. Did we admit KK 2.4?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so. The file, leverage file containing the regulatory framework and case law under the name of Kobus de Meyer Rolofse will be marked Exhibit KK 2.4. Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
What happened?
I'm not sure, Chair.
Okay, all right. Let's start.
Before the witness gives the evidence that has been brought here to inform the Commission about today, he has informed the legal team that there are certain things he would like to place on record at the outset.
Yes, Mr. Rolofse.
Thank you, Chair.
Is Mr. Rulofse, the police have got all kinds of titles. Is there a title that I should use? Or?
Mr. Rulofse is fine, Chair. I'm not
Yeah.
worried about
Oh,
ranks.
okay. No, I just want to make sure because I don't understand all of them. Yes.
I think after the testimony, you probably would be able to distinguish between the different ranks.
Let's hope so. Yes, I understand you wish to say something before you start.
Chair, I was just a little bit perturbed. The last couple of months in preparing for this affidavit, I have received increasing information to the effect that, which I consider as trying to inhibit me from testifying at the Commission. I have it in good authority. I do not wish to mention those names at this point in time because I need to protect them as well. But as I said, I was not expecting that. To me, it's a little bit of to me, it was a little bit sad that it happened. It's not affecting my testimony in the Commission. I will still testify and testify as to what I know. I just want to place that on the record that that it has happened, and I'm actually perturbed by it. So.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you for coming to give evidence to the Commission and to share what you know in terms of what has happened, where you have been working, and the investigations that you have conducted. It's very unacceptable when people who want to come and assist the nation by assisting the Commission to understand events that fall within its terms of reference are threatened or intimidated. It's really unacceptable because it's very important that the Commission should get as full a picture as possible of what has been happening, because without getting a full picture, it can't make proper recommendations that need to be made to make sure that certain things which may have happened in the past don't happen again, which is quite important for our country. I thank you for not being deterred by those threats from coming to give evidence. We appreciate that very much.
It's a pleasure, Chair, and I also believe in the Commission. I believe this is where we are supposed to make things right.
Yes, yes. And obviously you are quite knowledgeable in terms of security issues and measures to deal with threats and so on. But if you think that there is anything that the Commission may be able to do with regard to the threats to which you have referred, please share that information with the legal team and the investigators so that we can do what we can.
Thank you, Chair. I will do so if it's necessary.
Thank you.
Mr. Rulofse, can I ask you to, in bundle KK 2.1, which is the main bundle containing your affidavit, can I ask you to please turn to page 4 of that bundle? Do you recognize this document?
It is correct, Chair. It is my affidavit, or the first page of my affidavit.
Can I ask you to then turn to page 72, please? Whose signature appears on this page?
It would be the person that administered the oath, Chair.
Correct. And if you were to turn to page 71, whose signature appears at the bottom?
That is my signature, Chair.
If you go back to page 72, you will note that there is a difference in date. At the top, which is marked 29th day of August 2019, as compared to the stamp, which is dated 27 August 2019. On which day did you depose to this affidavit before a commission of oaths?
I deposed to the affidavit on the 27th. It's a mistake in terms of the date there, Chair.
Okay. If I could then ask you to turn to page 20 of this bundle. At paragraph 60, you brought it to the attention of the legal team that there was another date typographical error.
That is
Can you
correct.
please clarify it?
That is correct, Chair. The date should not read the 24th of October, it should read the 21st of October.
And now could I ask you to turn to Exhibit KK 2.2, please? In particular, page 2. Do you recognize this document?
That is correct, Chair. That is my affidavit, my supplementary affidavit.
And whose signature appears on page 3 of this affidavit?
It's both my signature and the person that that deposed. I mean that confirmed the affidavit.
And is there a similar date typographical error?
That is correct, Chair. It should read the 27th and not the 29th because I made this just after the other one.
And if I could ask you then turn back to page 2 of this affidavit, at paragraph 3, you highlighted another date typographical error.
Yes, it should read the 27th, Chair.
Because that is the date on which you deposed to your
That's
affidavit in
correct, Chair.
itself. So subject to the corrections, do you confirm that all the facts stated in both your main affidavit and the supplementary affidavit are true and correct and within your personal knowledge unless indicated otherwise?
That is correct, Chair.
If we can then start off with Exhibit KK 2.2, because it's inextricably linked to your main affidavit. What is the purpose of you deposing to the supplementary affidavit, Mr. Rolofsa?
Chair, during compiling the affidavit, I do work with names relating to people that were appointed in the agent program in 2011. At this point in time, I do not know whether some of those individuals are still in the agent program and are involved in projects. So, to err on the side of safety, I decided to address them by a number, and then supply the name to the chair, because I do not know if they are currently part of projects and busy with undercover operations, and I don't want to put that into jeopardy. That's the reason why I'm doing it this way.
If we can then turn to page 4 of the main bundle, which is KK 2.1. Mr. Rulo says, is it correct that you are Colonel in the South African Police Services and employed at the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigations in the Western Cape?
That is correct, Chair, although I spend most of my time currently up in Gauteng.
How did it come about that you give evidence before this commission?
Chair, I was approached by investigators of the commission, and they inquired about the investigations that I was involved in, and then that's how I came about being here.
At paragraph 5, you talk about your career in the SAPS. Before you address your career, can you please clarify what your academic qualifications are, please?
Chair, I have a BA degree, and my main subjects were international politics and political science. I also dabbled a little bit with the law. So that's where I am in terms of my degree.
Can I ask you to
Let
speak
me
a little
just
louder?
check, can everybody at the back hear clearly? No? Okay, it looks like, I think if you could raise your voice, maybe Miss September too.
Will do,
Okay,
Chair.
all right.
When did you join the South African Police Service?
I joined the police in 1986, in January 1986.
At paragraph 5 of your affidavit, you have a table of your career at the South African Police Service. Can you please take the chair through your career at the South African Police Service and the experience that you've acquired as an investigator?
Chair, as I said, I joined the South African Police Service in 1996. I was the section leader at Unit 19, public order policing at the time, up until 1987. Then I went to Cape Town. I was lucky enough to get a transfer there, and I've been there since. I have worked at Cape Town Police Station, at the Tactical Crime Prevention Unit at Cape Town Police Station. Then I went to a shift commander at Radio Control, which is commonly known as 10111. And then between 1990 and 1995, I was a group commander in intelligence gathering and coordination. I was recruited into the then security branch in 1990, and we were part of the transfer of the ANC intelligence into SABC, and through that period I was involved in intelligence gathering community. 1995 to 1996, I went to serious violent crimes, where I did information coordination regarding gangs. Then 1996, my career in terms of investigation started. I was first involved with investigations into taxi violence. Then I was involved with investigation into religious extremism, counterterrorism, which was commonly known as PAGAT at the time in Cape Town. In 2000, I joined the DSO, the Directorate for Special Directorate for, there's so many abbreviations now, the DSO, the Directorate for Special Operations, the Scorpions.
Scorpions.
Scorpions, yes.
Yeah, okay.
During that period, I was involved with, again with PAGAT. I also did the investigation into the travel scandal that was related to Parliament. Then I did various local government corruption cases. So I got involved with corruption and fraud in around about 2004. Then I was also involved in the Fidentia matter, which I investigated. And then in 2010, the Scorpions were disbanded, and I elected to join SABC again. And since then, I've been in the DPCI, where I was involved in the crime intelligence matter, which I'm testifying today about, also fraud and corruption within SASA, as well as CITA, and later on we became involved in the supply chain management processes of SABC and the fraud and corruption that takes place there.
Forgive me, but I'm even struggling to hear you. Could I ask you to speak louder, please?
Okay, I'm so sorry, I'll speak louder.
Thank you.
As I repeat some of it.
No, please continue.
Okay, and that is my experience. I'm currently on, and I use the term loosely, on secondment to IPID, in Independent Police Investigative Directorate, and again seconded to the ID, the Investigative Directorate. So I'm currently working with the Investigative Directorate in terms of the investigations that they are commissioned with, which includes investigations from the State Capture Commission.
Who does your position report to?
I still report to my direct head is still General Libia, Lieutenant General Libia from the DPCI. But I do, in terms of the investigations, report to IPID, as well as now the ID, which is Advocate Herman Cornea.
And is it therefore correct that you have more than 20 years of experience as an investigator?
That is correct, Chair.
Is it also correct that the evidence that you present before this commission arises out of your experience as an investigator, specific to particular transactions?
That is correct, Chair. It's part of the investigation that I dealt with and what happened during that investigation.
Have you given evidence at any other inquiry?
Yes, Chair, I've given evidence before the Makgoro Commission. My evidence related directly to the actions of Mr. Advocate Mkhwebe at the time, and to a lesser extent Advocate Jiba, but more with respect to Advocate Mkhwebe.
And then for the record, the Makgoro Commission of Inquiry, which you refer to, is correctly stated as the inquiry in terms of Section 12(6) of the National Prosecuting Authority Act.
That is correct, Chair, as stated in paragraph 6 of my affidavit.
Before we turn to the purpose of your affidavit on page 6, I'd ask you to please look at KK 2.3, which is the diagrams bundle. And in particular, the first diagram. If I can please ask for the diagram to be projected. Page 1. Chair, you will remember that this is the diagram that was presented at the outset of this particular stream of law enforcement. And this has been presented to this witness for identification as to which divisions, clusters, or departments his evidence relates. Do you?
Yes, I can't recognize it anymore, but if you say it was presented, must have been presented, yes, you may continue.
Chair, through you, Mr. Rulofsa, is it correct that all of the blocks or circles that have been marked in a color are either offices or institutions or departments that your evidence refers to?
That is correct, Chair.
And so for the record, if we look to the cluster of police,
If you look where?
to the cluster
Police.
of police
Yeah.
on the far left-hand side, the departments that you've highlighted, in addition to the officers to which your evidence relates, for the record is listed as crime intelligence, or rather, let me start from the top. The Commissioner of the South African Police Service, the National Head, the Deputy National Commissioners, Provincial Commissioners, and then the 4 divisions of Crime Intelligence, the South African Police Services, DPCI, being the Hawks, and IPID. Under SAPS, you have particularly highlighted Crime Investigation Services, General Detectives. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And under DPCI, you have highlighted serious commercial crime investigations and serious corruption investigations. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
You have also highlighted the Office of the Minister of Police.
That is correct, Chair.
If one then looks to the cluster of justice, for the record, you have highlighted State Attorney's Office,
That is
The-
correct, Chair.
National Prosecuting Authority, the Office of the NDPP, the Office of the DNDPP and NPS, in particular the Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Collectively, you have then centralized an additional highlight under the Parliament cluster, and that is the Auditor General's Office and the Parliamentary Oversight, but in particular the JSC on Intelligence and Portfolio Committees.
That is correct, Chair.
And lastly, on the cluster of finance, you have highlighted National Treasury and the and the AG's office.
That is correct, Chair.
And so, in highlighting these different divisions, aspects, departments, and officers, your evidence either mentions them or raises issue or concerns which arises out of either the positions or the officers as highlighted. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair. And if I may add, it also includes the Inspector General of Intelligence.
Okay, thank you for that. And so if we can now turn to page 6 of your affidavit. What is the purpose of the evidence that you present to this commission, Mr. Rulovsa?
Chair, the purpose of my affidavit is to place before the Commission evidence into the legal activities of senior and highly placed officers within crime intelligence, which is a department within the South African Police Service. As will become clearer later on, my initial concern in terms of this specific affidavit related to a murder investigation that I was requested to do, which then led to the investigation which I call the SSA looting investigation. And I also wish to make it clear to the Commission that I've got no view in terms of the guilt or innocence of any of the people that I'm mentioning in my affidavit, because that's the function of a court of law, if and when such evidence is presented at a trial. In my evidence, I'm trying to point out the seriousness of the allegations that was made at the time and the lack and failure of the investigation or assistance in the investigation to finalize this investigation. That is the second part of my testimony, in terms of what I want to deal with in my testimony. As I said, I also deal with anything that hampered the investigations and events that frustrated the investigation, which included senior members of SABC as well as senior members of the NPA. And I'm of the view that in doing so, these individuals became part of the problem, in that they were supposed to do what is expected of them in terms of the office that they hold, and they didn't. And therefore, I think that in my view, they obstructed the course of justice and defeated the ends of justice. As I said, the transactions I deal with in my affidavit originated or were facilitated by an operational unit, which I call, it's my term, an operational unit within crime intelligence, that was led by Major General Solomon Lazarus. He was the Chief Financial Officer of the Secret Services account at the time. And General Lazarus had the final financial authority in terms of his delegation in respect of the transactions that I am testifying about. He was also instrumental in appointing certain members within the operational unit that allowed him to manipulate financial transactions and for himself, to benefit himself and others.
If we could then just pause there. Is it then correctly stated that your evidence basically deals with, is to be addressed in two parts? The first deals with investigations that you've been involved in, and the second relates to interference in those investigations.
That is correct, Chair. The first part I deal with in my affidavit just to emphasize the importance of the seriousness of the allegation that was made. It is, as I said earlier, it's not about whether the people are guilty or not. It's just the seriousness, and the fact that it needed further investigation, and then what happened afterwards in terms of the non-assistance in terms of that investigation.
Thank you. How would you explain the chain of command within crime intelligence?
Chair, at the time when I got involved, General Madluli, Nagy Madluli, was Richard Nagy Madluli, he was the divisional commissioner at Crime Intelligence, and as such, the head of Crime Intelligence within SABS. The second person I mentioned, on which I'm focusing on, is General Lazarus, who was the Chief Financial Officer within the SSA account, the Secret Services account. The third person I am, although in a lesser amount, that I'm focusing on is Colonel Heine Johannes Barnard. He was a section commander within the supply chain management unit at Crime Intelligence, and he was a procurement officer, which I call as Company X. And if I can clarify, Company X was a front company used by CI, Crime Intelligence. It forms part of the clandestine operational setup of Crime Intelligence. In other words, they would do financial transactions through the company in order to hide agents and sources. That's the reason why it is dealt with in that manner. So I do not think it's fair of me to disclose the company name because it does not take what I'm testifying about any further.
Is it thus correct that Colonel Barnard reported to General Lazarus, who in turn reported to General Mdluli?
That is correct, and General Mdluli would in turn report to the National Commissioner at the time, whoever the National Commissioner would have been.
And who was the National Commissioner of Police at the time?
It was General Becky Kelly.
And the National Commissioner of Police at
I'm
the time?
sorry, who was it?
General Becky Kelly.
Okay, what time are we talking about?
Chair, I do have the time frames, but I do not have it in front of me now.
You've got it somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, but for the time to which your evidence relates in relation to this account, General Bekele was the National Commissioner. Is that correct? Or maybe for part of the time.
It's part of the time,
Yes.
Chair, because it's over quite
over a long period. So there's another time when it was somebody else who was National Commissioner, or there were other people who were National Commissioners at different times that's covered by part of your evidence.
That is correct, Chair, or acting, yes.
Yes, okay.
And the National Commissioner of Police in turn reported to whom?
He reports to the Minister of Police as well as Parliament.
And for purposes of your evidence, who was the Minister of Police at the time?
At the time, it was Minister Natin Tetwa.
Thank you.
Again, we need to check at the time.
At the time of General Becky Kelly.
Or at the time of...
Yes,
okay.
My time frame starts in 2009.
Yes,
So I'm now talking 2009 up until when, I can't remember when
yes.
the minister was placed
Changed.
somewhere else. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Thank you. How would
Well,
you...
it's just that it's important that, you are still going to give your evidence. You don't want somebody to complain that you are saying that throughout the events covered by your evidence, he was National Commissioner, if maybe it's only a quarter of that time that he was National Commissioner or Minister. That's why it's important to make that clear.
I agree, Chair, and I think we dealt with it during the affidavit
Yes.
and stipulated the time frame.
Okay.
Chair, I've been alerted to the fact that it is 11:15.
Okay, let's take the tea adjournment and we'll resume at 11:30.
As it pleases.
All rise.
Let's proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Rulofsa, can you please explain to the Chair your understanding of the financial delegations of authority within crime intelligence?
Chair, my understanding of the financial authorizations within crime intelligence is the fact that that from a specific rank or position, you are allowed to approve certain transactions up to a certain value, and the higher your rank goes, the higher the approval, the financial approval that you are entitled to give. In that regard, it would be then General Lazarus and General Madluli who would have within CI the highest authority in terms of the approval of the financial authorities.
And so within those positions, there are escalating thresholds of financial authorities. Is that right?
That is correct, Chairperson. As I said, I think it starts from a captain, if I'm not mistaken, and then the threshold gets higher as the position that you hold, the seniority of the position that you hold, and depending on where you are within crime intelligence.
You mentioned the Company X. When Company X transacted on behalf of crime intelligence, who was the main representative for the transactions which involved Company X?
Well, in terms of the procurement, Colonel Barnard would assist and recommend procurement in respect of whatever they identify that they need, and then the authority to approve those transactions would lie with General Lazarus in general, but at times when it exceeds his authority, it would go to either General Madluli or the National Commissioner for that matter, if it goes beyond a certain limit.
Sorry. And for purposes of your evidence, what is the time frame that your evidence covers?
Chairperson, the evidence covers the time frame since March 2011, or specifically 23rd of March 2011, up until to date, in respect of the investigation that I dealt with. And I'm relying on affidavits submitted by witnesses given to me during the course of that investigation. And either by witnesses and affidavits I made myself during that period. The information that I've obtained, as well as the exhibits, as well as the witness statements, are in my possession. And if needed, I will make those available to the Commission, but it is too voluminous for me just to add it. As I said, when I refer to specific evidence and affidavits, exhibits, or annexes, I'm in possession of such documentation. Unless attached to my affidavit, I will make the documents available to the Commission on request.
And so it's correct then that some of the matters that you refer to before this Commission relates to criminal investigations which are still pending?
That is correct, Chair. That is one of the reasons why I could not attach them.
For purposes of your evidence, there are various concepts that you refer to, and some of those concepts are elaborated upon from paragraph 13 of your affidavit to paragraph 26.
That is correct, Chair.
For the benefit of your evidence, can I ask you to then address some of these concepts? The first being on page 8, the Secret Services account. Before you do so, though, please clarify what is the mandate of crime intelligence?
Chair, the mandate of crime intelligence, and I'm taking this from the SAB's annual report, which is dated 2017-2018. It is to manage crime intelligence and analyze crime information and provide technical support for investigations and crime prevention operations. That is the mandate of crime intelligence. And the strategic objectives of crime intelligence are inter alia the following: to gather crime intelligence in support of the prevention, combating of investigation of crime, to collate, evaluate, analyze, coordinate, and disseminate intelligence for the purpose of technical, operational, and strategic utilization, to supply intelligence products relating to national strategic intelligence to national intelligence, to institute counterintelligence measures within the South African Police Service, to prevent and fight crime through enhanced international cooperation and innovation on police and security matters. So, in effect, their mandate relates to crime within South Africa, the fighting of crime. And by doing so, in assisting in the investigative arm of the police service in doing so.
So would the intelligence gathering function of crime intelligence include information if, for example, in a community, certain people plan to stage a protest, and in the process, they want to ban some government buildings? Would that be the kind of thing where crime intelligence is the part of SAPS that should get that information in advance, that intelligence in advance?
That is correct, Chair. In respect of, in the example that was mentioned now, it is expected of crime intelligence to have the necessary intelligence for the South African Police Service, specifically your uniform police or visible policing, to make the necessary plans and arrangements to either prevent or to make sure that when this happens, they are in a position to deal with it. So it is part and parcel of the crime intelligence that they need to gather for SAPS.
Okay, thank you.
What is the Secret Services account?
Chair, the Secret Services account is money that's been made available through National Treasury, and those monies are made available to crime intelligence, military intelligence, as well as national intelligence. Although they've got different mandates, but it comes from the same source. It comes from government. It's government money.
So would all funding that is given to crime intelligence for purposes of carrying out its functions fall within this account? So in other words, it's the only account that crime intelligence uses.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. That's their source of funding. They might have more than one account number into which the money has been
but they
placed
fall under the same.
They fall under the same. That's correct, Chair.
Okay.
So the functioning of all crime intelligence gathering activities of the South African Police Service is largely dependent upon the recruitment and utilization of informants. That's their core business. SSA supply the funding to obtain and maintain the recruitment and utilization of informants, which in turn supplies the information to obtain the above strategic objectives. Simply put, the Secret Services account is a financial management system in the SAPS that is funded and utilized by crime intelligence structures for inter alia the payment of agents, renting of safe houses, purchasing of assets, and the covering of costs and expenses for COVID operations. Similarly, as I stated earlier, the State Security Agency as well as military intelligence operate in a comparable system, although be it with different mandates.
What exactly is a safe house, Mr. Rulofse?
Chair, it is a premises identified by crime intelligence, which they would utilize for various functions. It could be a business premises within a business park that will be part of that objective in terms of that specific project that they are dealing with. In other words, they would need that, or it will be a house where they would be able to safely debrief informants without going out into the public. They can go and see them there. So there are various reasons or various utilization of specific safe houses as to why it's needed and why it's used. It is not used for, it cannot be used for private purposes, that's correct. Yeah.
So it would be premises other than normal offices of crime intelligence. And those premises would be used for any part of the operations of crime intelligence which may require secrecy.
That is correct, Chair, and that is what makes it. That is what makes what they do. It places a special responsibility on them, because under those circumstances, it becomes very easy to abuse the assets of the state.
Yes.
So there's a special condition,
procedure.
yeah, on them to because they are put in a position of trust.
Yeah.
So, and that is which is larger than, for instance, a visible policeman that's part of the visible policing.
So basically, if somebody within crime intelligence who has got the right authority believes that somebody within crime intelligence needs a place to conduct certain operations, either an office or a house, subject to following certain procedures, maybe a house or office may be identified, which would then be either purchased or leased by crime intelligence for purposes of carrying out those operations.
That is correct, Chair. There's normally a procedure that they follow. They would have a registered project. Then they would have certain goals and objectives within that registered project. And then if it needs for those goals and objectives to be attained, and they need to, for instance, lease a safe house, then they would do it in terms of that. So that memorandum will then accompany such an application, which then either will be either approved or turned down. And they, based on that, they will then continue with the lease or not.
You mentioned that the Secret Services account is used to fund the purchasing of assets. What type of assets are you referring to, by way of example?
Chair, I'm referring to any asset. I think with the right motivations, they will probably be able to buy a submarine. But the fact of the matter is you need to motivate what you need, and certain scenarios would need special equipment. So for the safe house, for instance, you would need to supply furniture. For an office park, office building, you would need to supply furniture as well. But I think the bulk of the monies in terms of the assets goes to the purchase of vehicles, because that's a very important aspect or very important tool within what they do.
Is the Secret Services account the only financial account of the South African Police Service?
No, Chair, there are two accounts that South African Police Service use. The one is not open to, the Secret Service account is not open to the rest of the South African Police. We have another account which we call the open account. That account is utilized for normal day-to-day traveling costs. But if I have to travel to Gauteng, for instance, they would pay my travel cost and my accommodation until I have to go back. So that is what that account is utilized for.
Is the Secret Services account and the open account audited in the same way?
No, Chair, it's not. It is both audited by the Auditor General, but there are safeguards in place in terms of the Secret Services account. The Auditor General has the right to go and have a look at documents relating to the acquisition of assets. But those documentation are normally classified, so there's also a special unit within the AG that deals with it. The South African the open account is audited through the normal process like any other department.
Is it therefore correct that, off the back of your evidence, National Treasury pays monies to the South African Police Services, which has two accounts? Is that correct?
Chair, I'm not exactly sure where it is paid into, but I think there's two separate streams of payment. The one goes in as part of the budget, which is the open budget and discussed in Parliament, as I think in the Portfolio Commission, Portfolio Committee of South African Police. And the other one is a budget that will be discussed at Portfolio Committee on Intelligence. I think that's the correct name for it.
Well, then at least insofar as the Secret Services account and the open account is concerned, both of those funds are state funds.
That is correct. That's correct, Chair. It is state funds.
And the funds of the Secret Services account is then focused to meet the mandate of crime intelligence.
That is correct, Chair.
On page 9, at paragraph 19, you outline the regulatory framework which is applicable to the functioning of crime intelligence and the Secret Services account. Chair, for you, just to highlight to you, KK 2.4 includes the first three pieces of legislation, which is the South African Police Services Act, the Public Finance Management Act, and the Secret Services Act, but it does not include the policy directives and procedures for crime intelligence gathering, which is a classified document. The next concept that you talk about is the classification of documents. And there you deal with the different types of classification and the process for doing so. We're now at paragraph 20 on page 9 of your affidavit.
That's correct, Chair.
Why are documents classified?
I'm sorry, are you at the right page? Are you on the right page?
I am on page 9,
Yes,
paragraph
okay,
20. Yes.
paragraph 20.
Yes.
Why are documents classified?
Chair, the documents are classified. There's various reasons, but one of the most important reasons would be to hide the identity of agents as well as informers, not to divulge the physical addresses of safe houses and business premises. So those would be the reasons it will fall within that framework that documents are classified within the SAP's environment, or crime intelligence environment.
What document governs the classification of documents?
It is the Minimum Information Security Standards document, which is commonly known as MIS, or the MIS document, which was adopted by, I think it was adopted by Parliament or the Cabinet at in early 2000s.
And it's correct that this document is classified as restricted, but it's available on the internet.
That is correct, Chair. By virtue of Right to Know, the Right to Know campaign, they've placed it on the internet.
Chair, this document too you will find in bundle KK 2.4. At page 10, you talk about the different levels of classification. What are the key levels of classification?
Chair, before I get there, I just want to draw the attention of the Chair to paragraph 22. This is a caveat within the MIS document, and it states clearly that classification mentioned above are described below. And then there's a note: security measures are not intended and should not be applied to cover up maladministration, corruption, criminal actions, etc., or to protect individuals or officials involved in such cases. So that is, for me, that is a very important note within that document.
Yes.
Why is that particular paragraph important to you, Mr. Rulofsa, for purposes of your evidence?
The purpose of my evidence is to show the problems that arise from classification or over-classification of documents, and then the not understanding that you cannot use classification to hide criminality. And I think that is the purpose of one of the purposes of my testimony here today.
Is it your assertion that the classification of documents was used to not further investigations that you've been involved in?
That is my assertion, Chair. What I'm saying is that the documents were classified. The non-classification of those documents, as far as I'm concerned, allowed for the non-prosecution of those members involved in these alleged transactions. And the classification is used as an excuse not to continue with the various investigations or to hamper the investigations. And in most of these instances, the individuals involved are the ones that classified the documents. So it becomes very difficult to get the documents declassified because declassification can only take place by the author or the National Commissioner or someone delegated by him.
And whilst you've explained who classifies documents, who is entitled to declassify documents?
Chair, as I just said, it would be the author of that specific document who classified it in the first place, or the National Commissioner.
How many levels of classification are there for classification of documents?
Chair, there are 4 levels of classification, according to the MIS document, which is restricted, confidential, secret, and top secret.
And what is the differences between these levels of classification?
Chair, there are various differences. It is set out in my affidavit. I will just allude to the explanation in the MIS document. A restricted document, as explained, is used when the compromise of information can cause inconvenience to a person or institution, but cannot hold a threat or threat of damage. However, compromise of such information can frustrate everyday activities. Confidential definition, and then there's a test that deals with that. And then there's an explanation on page 11. Confidential is used when compromise of information results in undue damage to the integrity of a person or institution, but not entailing a threat or serious damage. The compromise of such information, however, can frustrate everyday functions, lead to an inconvenience, and bring about wasting of funds. The inhibition of systems, the periodical disruption of administration, for example, logistical problems, delayed personnel administration, financial relapses, etc., that inconvenience institution but can be overcome. The orderly and routine cooperation between institutions or individuals being harmed or delayed but not bringing functions to a halt. In respect of this secret classification, the explanation as provided by the MIS document reads as follows: can result in the disruption of the planning and fulfilling of tasks, i.e. the objectives of a state or institution in such a way that it cannot properly fulfill its normal functions, and can disrupt the operational cooperation between institutions in such a way that it threatens the functioning of one or more of these institutions. And then top secret, the explanation for top secret, according to the MIS document, the function of state and or institution being brought to halt by disciplinary measures, sanctions, boycotts, or mass action, the severing of relations between states, and a declaration of war. So the threshold is quite high when it comes to top secret and secret as to why you want to classify the document.
Yes. At the back, if you are still fine, you can still hear. You don't have to make any indication, but if you don't hear, give me some indication. I think they can hear you. Okay, all right.
To state what may be obvious then, there are ascending levels of classification, the lowest level being restricted, the level above that being confidential, the level above that being secret, and the level above that being top secret.
That is correct, Chair.
Is the security clearance of an individual important or relevant at all in relation to a document which has been classified?
Chair, in terms of the author, it cannot have any bearing in the sense that a person do not know what information he's going to receive. The information that he receive might be of such a sensitive nature that he has to classify the document as top secret before disseminating the document any further. So it depends on the circumstances, Chair.
Is it correct that you need a particular level of security in order to access a particular document which has been classified at a particular level?
That is correct, Chair. You can access the document which is similar to your
ranking in
access.
terms of confidentiality or secrecy,
That's correct, Chair.
classification.
Yeah.
The last concepts that you address is on page 12, and you talk specifically to the ranks within the police. Can I ask you to turn to page 74, please, which is annexure 1 to your affidavit. Do you recognize this document?
I do, Chair.
What exactly is this document?
This document was a document that was compiled by the South African Police Service. It was just prior to the changing of ranks in 2010, which changed the previous ranking system, which was more a civilian ranking system, to again a military ranking system. And this was the rank system that was adopted in April 2010.
In particular, the 1st of April 2010, is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Is it therefore still current to the ranks of today?
It is still current to the ranks of the day, Chair.
Can I ask you to turn to page 75, please?
I'm there.
There is a difference in markings between commissioned officers and non-commissioned officers, which is marked on the line on the right-hand side.
That is correct, Chair.
Please explain what's the difference between commissioned officers and non-commissioned officers.
Chair, the simple difference is a commissioned officer is an officer within the South African Police Service. In terms of the current ranking system, which I stated earlier is still the same. However, it has changed because the rank of lieutenant has fell away, as well as the rank of major has fell away. They were collapsed into captain and to lieutenant colonel. That happened not too long ago.
Thank you.
But in essence, you would have a non-commissioned officer is police officers of the rank of warrant officer, sergeant, or constable, and then above that it would be then a commissioned officer, who is either part of junior management, middle management, or senior management.
And then for the record, this particular document on the left-hand side lists the police rank in the current, or rather it lists the current police rank as it was at that time, and the column alongside it lists the new police rank, which was since adopted on the 1st of April 2010. Is that right?
That is correct, Chair.
Now, how would a member of the police progress from one rank to the next?
Chair, there are more than one way, but the police structure is there's a specific post allocated to if I can take an example, for instance, a police station, you would have 50 posts allocated to that police station. One of those posts would be the station commander, one of those posts would be the head of visible policing and the head of detectives, and so forth as you go down. So when you want to get a promotion can take place through that post being vacated either by death, by that person being promoted somewhere else, that person leaving the South African Police Service. There are various ways how the post can open up, and then you can then apply to for that post. A process will then be followed, you will be shortlisted, and if you're successful, you will then be appointed in that post. And the rule is that you have to stay in that post for at least 2 years before you can ask for a further promotion.
So if one looks again at page 75, alongside the middle column, which is the current police rank, there is another column called post title, where you have from the top National Commissioner, Deputy National Commissioner, Divisional Commissioner, Provincial Commissioner, and so forth. What's the difference then between a post title and a rank?
Chair, the difference as far as I'm concerned, I'm not an expert on this, but the post title is just, it is how you would refer to a specific post, regardless of the person in that post. So the National Commissioner will always be general. Deputy National Commissioner is a Lieutenant General. You can only get acting Deputy National Commissioners if they're not Deputy National Commissioners, and I'm talking under correction there. But it is based on the seniority that you have. You would have, if you look at the structure of the South African Police Service, you would have the National Commissioner on top. Then you would have his 3, 5, or 6 Deputy National Commissioners, who are all having the rank of Lieutenant Generals. Then you will have Divisional Commissioners, and in respect of, if I can refer to General Madluli, he was a Divisional Commissioner. Then you will have Provincial Commissioner, and you will have Assistant Commissioners, which will be component heads and so forth.
So is it to be understood correctly that the post is an office within the organogram structure?
That is as far as I know, yes, Chair.
And the rank is something that is particular to the individual who occupies a particular post?
That is how I understand it, Chair.
Okay. And then is it also correct that in order to progress from one rank to the next, when an applicant then applies for a post that requires a particular rank, if that applicant meets the requirements of that post, that individual assumes that rank?
That is correct, Chair.
Is it possible to jump from one rank to another?
Are you talking about more than one rank at a time?
Yes, apologies for that. Is it possible to progress more than one rank at a time?
Chair, it's not supposed to be, but I've seen it happen before. I think there's exceptional circumstances where it can happen. For instance, if a person's got special skills, he has studied and he needs to be appointed within the forensic laboratory, for instance, and he's now a chemist or whatever the position might be. He might have been a sergeant and he's now been appointed in a captain's position. Because of the scarce skills that he has, or she has.
Can we then go back to page 3?
Sorry. You have different ranks, but whenever there is a vacancy on a certain rank, that would be advertised, is that correct?
That is correct, Chair. Most of those advertisements would be internal, but you would also get, if you look at your provincial commissioners and so forth, you would get external
yes.
Advertisements for those, but most of it is internal.
But where a post is advertised, there would be no restriction, would there be, to say only people who fall into certain ranks may apply. In other words, I may be at rank, let me see the ranks here. I may be at the rank of captain, and then there is a position for director, brigadier. If I think that I meet all the requirements and I've got what it takes, I may apply for that position, isn't it?
Chair, nothing stops you from applying, but I do not think you would qualify in respect of your application, because you would not have the necessary skills and the necessary you would not have the necessary skills to apply for that. So you would fall out in the application process, but there's nothing stopping you from applying.
Would that relate to the experience part? But in terms of the formal, for example, formal educational qualifications, I may qualify in terms of that, but maybe I might fall short of the requisite experience.
And
Is that what you're talking about? So what I'm trying to establish is whether the fact that I'm at a certain rank may exclude me completely, or whether it might not exclude me completely, but I'm unlikely to be shortlisted because there will be so many others above my rank, for example.
Chair, if I can answer it in the following manner. The only exclusion that I'm aware of at this point in time is the exclusion, the 2-year rule. In other words, if you've been appointed in a specific rank, you cannot apply for a promotion within that two-year period.
Yes.
In terms of the others, the difference between a non-commissioned officer and an officer is your academic qualification. So if you are a non-commissioned officer and you want to apply for a commissioned officer post, then you would have to have the necessary academic qualifications. If you are, the fact of the matter, you can put in your application, but in terms of the requirements, you won't be considered. If you are a commissioned officer and you're a captain and you want to apply for the general's post, I think you're most welcome to do so, but within the requirements that is needed for that specific post. So in the normal course of business, those applications will fall out.
So would the position be that the norm is that people who would be appointed to a certain rank are people who were occupying the rank immediately below that one as a norm, but that sometimes it happens that somebody who was occupying a rank that is 2 ranks below the one he or she is applying for gets appointed.
That is correct, Chair. We term it going through the ranks. That's the term that we use. So that is the norm. As I said, there are instances where there is exceptional circumstances where there is special skills required.
Yes,
where that can happen.
Okay.
So that's in a nutshell as to how I understand it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
If I could ask you then to turn back to page 13 of your affidavit, where you document your frustration in securing classified documents. Can you please elaborate on the frustrations that you encountered as you document in your affidavit?
Chair, as part of my investigation, it became evident that the classification of documentation was utilized precisely to cover up maladministration, corruption, criminal actions, and or to protect individuals involved in such instances. Exactly what the missed document says you cannot do. Therefore, in my view, I think that many of the classified documents were incorrectly classified, in that the information contained in such a document did not warrant the high level of classification. And then secondly, since May 2012, that's a period of more than 7 years, the management of SABS and CI have frustrated the declassification of documents, which, in my view, has been tantamount to refusing to supply the declassified documents to me. This concerns both documents that I have requested to be declassified and documents that are already in my possession, awaiting declassification. To place the undermentioned crime intelligence investigation into context, I will deal with specific instances regarding my investigation into the SSA looting investigation.
So before you go there, so what you are actually saying is that you are meant to conduct certain investigations, and those investigations, or some of them, relates to the Secret Service account, and that in order to carry out your function, your mandate, to do your job, you have over the years needed certain documents which are classified, but the management of both SAPS and crime intelligence have frustrated your investigations by refusing to declassify documents which you need for your investigations. That's right.
That is correct, Chair.
And that has happened over 7 years, I think you say.
That is correct, Chair. It happened over quite a long time, and various role players within that process.
When senior management of SAPS and crime intelligence frustrate such investigations as are being carried out by somebody within SAPS, what remedies have you got? What have you had to do, or are you just stuck because they are refusing? Is there a door on which you are allowed to go and knock and say, I'm being frustrated here by people who should assist me with this investigation?
Chair, if you would allow, I think that will come out at the latter part of my, or the second part of my affidavit, in terms of what I've done in order to get this documentation declassified.
Okay, as long as you address it at some stage.
Yes, that's the second part of my evidence.
Because part of what I'll be looking at is what it is that the Commission might be able to do to try and make sure that you are not frustrated in your investigations. But we'll deal with it when you come to that part.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. I just want to put it on record. I'm not here. I'm not at the Commission to ask the Commission to help me declassify the documents.
Yes.
I'm here to explain why it didn't happen, and that something needs to be done to rectify that specific situation.
Yes. No. I'm not necessarily talking about the disclassification. I mean, obviously, investigation, the types of investigations you are doing are very important. And if they are being frustrated, that should be a concern. And to the extent that the investigations may relate to matters of corruption and maladministration.
That's correct, Chair.
The whole country has an interest in knowing whether there are valid reasons for certain officials not giving you cooperation. So that's the angle.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Yes.
As we move into the different types of investigations that you've been involved in, it may be important for you to first clarify how investigators in DPCI are assigned to matters.
Chair, normally what would happen is that, and I'm not,
Just to mention again, DPCI being what is normally called the Hawks.
that is correct, Chair, the Hawks.
Yes.
Normally what would happen and I'm talking about on the provincial level now, you have three streams of investigations, or three units, which is serious organized crime, serious financial crimes, and corruption. And a specific docket investigation would come into the unit. It will be then decided, does it fall under organized crime, or does it fall under serious financial crime? And then based on that, a decision will be taken to give it to a specific unit within the DPCI or within the Hawks, and then that commander of that specific unit would then decide Investigator X will receive this investigation and Investigator Y will receive that investigation. It is to make sure that the work are allocated equally to members, and to allocate it to members that if there's a certain skill that's required, that member gets that specific investigation.
What then happened on the 21st of March 2011?
Chair, I was called by currently Lieutenant General Matakata. She was then the Major General Matakata. She was the head of the Hawks in the Western Cape. She requested me to attend a meeting, which I did. In the meeting there was other individuals, which included herself, Major General Sabia, and Lieutenant General Petros, who was the Provisional Commissioner at the time in Gauteng, and Colonel Viljoen. We were then requested by Sabia, General Sabia, to take over an investigation that was conducted by the DPCI in Gauteng. Now, various reasons were given to us as to why it was needed to be done. One of them, that the investigators were, the current investigators, those investigators were intimidated, and the second one was that they needed someone from the outside to look at this objectively. That was the reason that was advanced to myself, and General Matakata then told us to continue with the investigation. That is how I got onto this investigation, and it is within General Matakata's right and mandate to appoint me to investigate any matter as the provincial head of the DPCI within the Western Cape.
And what investigation are you specifically referring to here?
I'm referring to what we are calling the Mudluli investigation, which was a murder investigation. For the purposes of the Commission, I'm referring to it as the Phosphorus case, because that's where it happened.
So you were called into this meeting, you were assigned to this case, and who was the lead investigator for this investigation?
Chair, by virtue of my rank, I became the lead investigator of this investigation. As I was the senior, in respect of, I was Colonel Viljoen's senior at the time.
What happened on the 31st of March 2011?
Chair, on the 31st of March, we made an arrangement with General Mudluli to hand himself over at the Boksburg Magistrates Court, which he then did, and he was then placed on the court roll, and he was detained at that point.
And what were the charges against him?
At the time, the charges were the following. It's a charge of murder and attempted murder, and other charges relating or ranging from intimidation, kidnapping, assault, and defeating ends of justice.
What then transpired on the 7th of April 2011?
Chair, on the 7th of April, that was after we conducted the bail application, General Mdluli and 3 others, who was his co-accused at the time, were granted bail. And the case was postponed, I think, until the 30th of September 2011 for further investigation.
Is it correct that it was also postponed for the allocation of a High Court date?
Yeah, in respect of the 30th of September, a High Court date would have been allocated for this matter, as well as the indictment would have been given to the accused at the time.
Is it also correct that it was on the 14th of February 2012 that the matter was set down for trial?
That is correct, Chair. On the 30th of December, the matter was set down for trial on the 14th of February 2012 at Gauteng South High Court in Johannesburg.
Did the trial proceed?
No, Chair, the trial did not proceed, regardless of the fact that the charge sheet was drawn up and the indictment was given. The matter was then referred for an inquest at the time.
On whose instruction was it referred for an inquest?
Chair, from what I know, it was an instruction of the DBP of Gauteng South, which is Advocate Chauke.
And was that decision challenged?
That is correct, Chair. The decision was challenged by the freedom under law in first the High Court, and then it was confirmed in the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Chair, both of those judgments have been included in bundle KK 2.4.
I say the statement doesn't say much about what they say. Could you cover that just briefly?
In relation to
to what the judgment said? What was the basis for challenging and what was the basis for the decision, just so that there is proper context? Or is that something that you might be more convenient to deal with later?
If I may, Chair.
Okay, all right. Just maybe when we come back from lunch.
Will do, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
Following the decision of the Supreme Court of Appeal, what following steps were taken?
I'm sorry, you're talking about decision of the Supreme Court of Appeal. There was an appeal, you mean?
Yes, Chair. The
Yeah,
first judgment.
Let's start from there.
Okay.
The judgment of the High Court in Pretoria was a judgment of Judge Murphy,
Yes, Chair.
and he set aside the decision of the DPP. Is that correct, Mr. Chauke?
Yes, Chair.
And there was an appeal against that judgment,
Correct, Chair.
and the appeal went to the Supreme Court of Appeal. And you can just formally just say what happened at the appeal.
The Supreme Court of Appeal effectively endorsed the judgment of your learned brother, Judge Murphy. And in the result, the charges were reinstated against Richard Mdluli.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Then when we come back from lunch, if you can just touch on just whatever may be important in relation to those without necessarily through the witness, just to, so that the context is known and those listening can appreciate what happened.
As it pleases, Chair. What is the importance of the Phosphorus case to the Secret Service's investigations that you led?
Chair, at the time, we did not concentrate on either crime intelligence or the Secret Service's account. Our focus was on the Phosphorus case itself. But during the investigation of the Phosphorus case, there were members of crime intelligence that came to me and to Colonel Viljoen, and they gave us certain information which led us to believe that there were acts of criminality being committed within crime intelligence, especially with funds from the Secret Services account. Although we received the information quite early, or fairly early into the forced arrest case, we didn't have time at the time to follow up on all the allegations that was made, because we were concentrating on the forced arrest case to finalize that. But as the work, as we finalized the work into the forced arrest case, we were able to spend more time with the information given to us by other members of crime intelligence. The second thing that happened, and I think that is probably the one that opened it up, is the fact that we were, as part of the forced arrest matter, we did a search and seizure at the home of General Madluli in, I can't remember the exact date now, but it would have been in just either early April or late April or early May, but I think it is in April. And during
which year?
Sorry,
Which year?
20. Sorry, I'm talking about 2011 now.
20?
2011.
Okay, all right. If there is something that will refresh your memory, you can have a look.
Okay, I will do so,
Yeah.
Chair. I just want to see if I can get that date.
Yeah,
I'll have a look for the data for the life of me. I can't
Yes,
recall it
okay.
right now, Chair.
okay.
Please.
Okay, I will come back.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Chair, I will come back and
Yes.
share the date with you.
Yes,
During the search and seizure, we were able to find, or we found, 2 vehicles on the premises of General Madluli. The two vehicles, I think the one was a ML Mercedes-Benz and the other one was a BMW, 3 Series BMW. Inside the 3 Series BMW, we found an invoice relating to the acquisition of that specific 3 Series BMW. And at the bottom of that invoice, there was a note stating that a specific vehicle has been traded in lieu of the vehicle that we have now before us. And when we followed up on that, we established that that vehicle actually belonged to, it's a private vehicle of General Madluli.
the one that had been traded in.
The one that had been traded in, yes. The
Yes.
details of the vehicle was the one that was traded in, which is at the bottom of that specific invoice.
But the 2 vehicles that you found on his premises were crime intelligence vehicles, or not really?
They were crime intelligence vehicles bought by crime intelligence by the Secret Services account.
Yes, okay.
So it was for purposes of agents and informers to be utilized in their capacity as agents and informers. Following up on that, we were able to establish the dealership that was involved in the transaction. The dealership was identified as Liu Hayes in Pretoria. When we approached the dealership, they assisted us and they cooperated with the investigation, and they gave us the vehicle files. And then part of those vehicle files we found in the transaction, and they explained to us exactly how the transaction worked.
And since you are addressing this aspect now, please proceed to explain to the Chair how the transaction worked.
The transaction at Liu Hayes happened as follows. The vehicle that there were 2 vehicles. Crime intelligence came to Liu Hayes and asked him for a vehicle, a BMW, and then they also asked for them to put on the floor on their floor at the dealership the private vehicle of General Madluli to be sold privately out of hand. Because he was still an amount, and I'm talking under correction, of 80,000 more or less there. It's outstanding on his higher purchase of that vehicle. So they needed to cover that amount for him to get rid of that specific vehicle. Then an arrangement was made that the profit that would or the discount that would go to the one BMW would then be transferred to the outstanding amount in terms of the balance of the hire purchase of that specific vehicle, the private vehicle of General Madluli. However, that was not enough. I think that amounted to about 40,000 rand. So what happened after that is then another company by the name of, a dealership by the name of Atlantis Motors, which we will deal with later, provided 50,000 rand to Lewis, which then allowed them to finalize or to settle the debt on the vehicle, the outstanding amount on the vehicle, the private vehicle of General Madluli. However, the 40,000 rand had to be paid, the 50,000 rand had to be paid back. So in order to do that, Crime Intelligence said they will buy 2 vehicles. The other vehicle, the second vehicle, was then bought for, the vehicle wasn't immediately available, and it was only delivered later on, so that the how do you call it, discount that was supposed to go to that vehicle wasn't available at the time when Madluli settled his amount. So that vehicle came later, and the discount then went back to the Lewis, and that money was then paid back to Nissan Atlantis as part of the funds that was used to settle the debt on Madluli's vehicle. So that is in essence how it worked. The 2 vehicles in question are both vehicles bought by Crime Intelligence through the Secret Service account and approved by General Lazarus, and arranged by Colonel Barnett. That is, as I said, that is in essence the case that unfolded before us as part of our investigation.
Yes, I just want to understand the whole transaction. So, Crime Intelligence did, as you understand the transaction, did Crime Intelligence need to buy 2 vehicles? Or you can't say?
Chair, later on it transpired when I received the documents. Now, these are the documents that I cannot utilize.
Yes.
When it transpired that the vehicles, that the memo that the company, the payment for these vehicles, or the memo that accompanied the request to buy the vehicle, were indeed false. The reasons supplied in there does not support the actual use of the vehicle.
Yes.
So it was bought for, the reasons given was something and then was used for something else.
Okay,
So there was a misrepresentation to the Secret Services account as well as the South African Police Service in terms of that, in terms of the monies that was used there.
Yes, but ultimately 2 vehicles were purchased by Crime Intelligence.
That is correct, Chair. And for and the 2 vehicles that was bought, the one went to. I will have to have a look at the number within that document that I gave you, Chair, as well as the other vehicle went to General Madluli for his use.
But they were they registered under Crime Intelligence, or they were bought with, or Crime Intelligence money was used to buy them, but
Chair,
otherwise they were registered under General Madluli's name?
Chair, I cannot remember General Madluli's vehicle. I don't think it was registered specifically in his name. It was registered in a front company used by Crime Intelligence, but the other vehicle was registered in the person that used the vehicle.
I'm still talking just about the 2.
Yes, I'm talking about those 2 years.
Yes, you say you don't think that any of them, those 2, were registered in General Madluli's name. You don't think so?
No, what I'm saying is the one vehicle, if I remember correctly, was registered. In other words, the 5 Series BMW was registered in a front company's name, used by CI, and the other vehicle was registered in one of the in one of the individuals' names, which is in that list in front of you, Chair.
Okay, okay. So would it be correct to say that whoever was key to the purchase of these two vehicles didn't want to hide the fact that these were crime intelligence vehicles, but they may have wanted to have unlawful use of them?
Yes, Chair, to a certain extent. That is why Company X is used, to hide it from the public that it is a crime intelligence vehicle. So
Yes.
that is a requirement, or I would consider a legal requirement,
Yes.
for them to give a vehicle to someone who is involved in actual projects,
Yes.
for the safeguard of that specific person or that project.
Yes.
But in this instance, that is not what I found.
And the private vehicle, where now it comes in, was any money used that should have been for the benefit of crime intelligence, but ultimately was used to benefit an individual?
Chairperson, in respect of that transaction, the monies that that is supposed to accrue to crime intelligence in the form of discounts, which related to about 90,000 rand or 80,000 rand. As I said, the exact amount is mentioned later in my affidavit. That
Yes.
amount should have accrued to crime intelligence,
Yes.
that discount. But instead it went to cover the cost of the final installment amount of
the private.
General Maduli, yes, a private individual.
Yes. So would that money have been paid directly to him, or would it have been paid to wherever he was going to pay to settle that debt?
Chairperson, I haven't looked at all the detail, but from what I can remember, that money was paid by Leo Hayes to the banking institution that still had.
That he owed.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
If I can then take you to page 17 before we continue with the earlier part of the evidence. You talk specifically to the role of Colonel Barnard in purchasing the BMW for General Mhluli. Is it correct then that this is exactly the same transaction that you were now referring to as you were explaining it to the Chair?
That is correct, Chairperson. This is the transaction that I just explained to the Commission.
And is it then correct that, to break down what you said, that it was Company X who was represented by Colonel Barnard in the purchase of those vehicles on behalf of crime intelligence?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Is it correct that it was Colonel Barnard who represented Company X in the purchase of the vehicles by crime intelligence?
That is correct, Chair. And payment was authorized by General Lazarus.
And the trade-in vehicle was the vehicle which belonged to General Mhluli? And what was the settlement amount on that vehicle, as you've indicated in paragraph 42?
Chair, the settlement amount was 560,526 rand and 1 cent. I see that I did not mention the value of the vehicle, which was then obviously subtracted from the settlement amount, which amounted to about 90,000.
And in essence, the evidence that you've given so far is that Colonel Barnard, on behalf of Company X, purchased 2 vehicles for crime intelligence, so to speak, in order for them to finance the shortfall on the trade-in vehicle of General Mhluli.
That is correct, Chair.
And what has been the outcome of this particular investigation?
Chair, this was the beginning. General Mhluli and Colonel Barnard was arrested. And my evidence before the Mokgoro Commission relates to this specific transaction. And on the 14th of November, the case was withdrawn in the regional court, or the Commercial Crimes Court in Pretoria.
Now, having explained the link between the Phosphorus case and the Secret Services account investigation, you mentioned that you were approached by various members within crime intelligence.
That is correct, Chair, especially in the early part of the investigation.
Did these members approach you openly?
No, Chair, they would give you a call and you would have to go and meet them somewhere clandestine where they feel comfortable talking to you.
Why were they scared to meet with you?
Chair, from what I understand, what they told me is that they are scared. They don't want to come forward. And when coming forward in the past, they were basically told, you cannot do this, or you must stop your investigation, or why are you asking these questions? So they didn't feel comfortable speaking to their senior officers within crime intelligence, because that conversations or that reprimand came from their own officers, their own senior management.
At paragraph 38 on page 15, just to take you a few pages back, you talk about an affidavit of Colonel Jacobus Johannes Hendrik Roos, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, I think it's Jacobus and not
Jacobus.
Jacobus.
Apologies for that. If I can then ask you to go to page 83 of the same bundle. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, Chair, I do. It is an affidavit that we received from Colonel Roos. If I'm not mistaken, it was commissioned on the 6th of November 2013, and I obtained the affidavit as part of the crime intelligence investigation, or the SSA investigation.
So were you involved in any interviewing or taking down this particular affidavit at all?
That is correct, Chair. I interviewed Mr. Roos on various occasions regarding his involvement and what had happened to him, because it was important for me to understand and to realize the difficulties that he has gone through, which at the time seemed very much similar to the ones that I'm going through. And that is the reason why I also took his affidavit to explain where we are at in respect of our investigation, the SSA investigation.
And what's the important features of this affidavit and the evidence that he gives in this affidavit?
Chair, in essence, what Mr. Roos has said, that he has in the past brought to the attention of senior management within crime intelligence, and this now spans from 2004, which did not include the time frame that I investigated, that he was struggling to get senior management to cooperate and to assist with, which I would consider serious accusations towards members of crime intelligence. The one, for instance, dealt with a company that was used by a member of crime intelligence to clean safe houses, but he does not declare it, and there's overpayment that takes place. So you need to understand, I think for the Commission to understand his position, Colonel Roos was an auditor, internal auditor at crime intelligence. So it was his work to audit the Secret Services account. So in terms of that, he had access to those documents. He started an investigation in 2004, and he was immediately stopped by General Mpego in a manner that's not even, I don't even consider professional.
And what position did General Mpego hold at the time?
As far as I know, General Mpego was either the Divisional Commissioner of Crime Intelligence, or he was the acting Divisional Commissioner. I'm not exactly sure, but he was the leading person at Crime Intelligence at the time when this took place.
What happened after General Mpego stopped Colonel Roos in his investigation?
Well, that's the point. Nothing happened. He was not allowed to continue with his investigation. And the important part for me came in 2009 with the appointment of General Madluli. And that relates to the testimony I'm giving today. And that is why I asked him for an affidavit. Basically, what Mr. Roos is saying, that after the appointment of Mr. Madluli, or General Madluli in 2009, he was appointed on the 1st of June, if I'm not mistaken, of 2009. He
Yes.
then...
Correct.
he
1st of
the-
July 2009.
Sorry, Chair, it's the 1st of July 2009. He immediately, or I'm not, immediately is probably the wrong word, but within the same month, he requested Colonel Roos, together with other members, I think they all form part of the audit team, but I'm not sure about the other two, to do an investigation into the Secret Services account, and with specifically focusing on General Lazarus as the CFO of the account. He was given a written instruction to do so, and his investigation lasted for a while, a couple of months. He provided General Madluli with progress reports in terms of his investigation. He then, at the time, he decided to continue with the investigation that was stopped in 2004, and he also picked up some other anomalies which he then wanted to investigate. He was then, after giving the second progress report, he had difficulties in obtaining documents in his own environment as the auditor. And those difficulties, according to him, came from General Lazarus, who stopped him from getting the documentation that he needs to finalize the investigation.
Is it to be understood that he was stopped by the very person that he was asked to investigate?
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you.
He then in writing requested General Madluli to, or he prepared a document for General Madluli for his signature, which would allow him access to these documents. General Madluli then refused to sign it, and on the 3rd of December 2009, General Madluli removed him from the investigation and stopped that investigation and didn't continue. He wasn't given reasons apart from the fact that he should stop the investigation. So to me that became important because that was part and parcel of what I've experienced.
What happened in November of 2009? We're on page 16 of your affidavit, paragraph 39.
My affidavit, page 16.
Yes.
In November 2009, General Lazarus, he facilitated a trip abroad for General Madluli and his current wife, which is Teresa Lyons, to Singapore. Shortly thereafter, he facilitated another trip abroad for General Madluli and his ex-wife, Mrs. Vusavani Lily Madluli, to China. And then, as I said, I deal with this in more detail later on. But as on the 3rd of December, then General Madluli stopped the investigation into General Lazarus and the Secret Services account.
So this was an investigation into General Lazarus' facilitation of the trip for General Madluli and his wife to Singapore.
No, Chair, the investigation did not relate to that. The investigation related to the LLVS information company that was identified,
okay.
For the
and
record,
other issues relating to the abuse of the Secret Service
Okay.
account.
Okay.
and for the record, are you referring to LLVS Trading Services?
That is correct, Chair.
Now, what is the importance of you mentioning the investigation that Colonel Roos was involved in, and then following it up with trips that you unearthed to have been arranged by General Lazarus for the Mdluli family, followed up by the stopping of the investigation.
Chair, during the course of the investigation, I'm not talking about over the period. It became evident to me that General Mdluli, when he was appointed as the head or Divisional Commissioner of Crime Intelligence, came there with an intention to, let's call it, clean up crime intelligence. Unfortunately, he was then, and I would at that stage I would call him the victim of General Lazarus, who set in motion certain events to compromise General Mdluli, which includes these two events. And based on that, General Mdluli had no option but to stop any investigation because his own actions would become known at that point in time. And that is the reason why I'm mentioning it in this fashion. Now you'll see from when I testify further, this is not a isolated incident. It happens later on in the affidavit as well, where people are getting drawn into a situation and then afterwards they are not able to walk away from that.
If we could now then go to page 18 of your affidavit. At which you talk about the process that you went through to obtain classified documentation relevant to the investigations that you were involved in.
That is correct, Chair.
Chair, it is at paragraph 47 that the date we searched for appears, and that is that on the 6th of September 2011, the search and seizure warrants were duly authorized.
Is that date correct?
Chair, the date is correct, but it's not the same. I'm not talking about the search and seizure at the home of General Mdluli here. I'm talking about a different search and seizure.
Okay. Will you get that
Yeah.
corrected in a supplementary September?
Yes. Yes, Chair. We'll then actually need to find the correct date for the search and seizure. This search and seizure then that was obtained on the 6th of September 2011, what did it relate to?
Chair, it related to the information that we received from members of crime intelligence, firstly. Secondly, it relates to let's call it the Mdluli Barnett investigation, the BMW investigation. So we were looking for documentation either to prove or disprove whether these transactions took place. And based on that, we applied for the search and seizure warrant, which was issued on the 6th of September 2011. Unfortunately, I don't know how you want to phrase that, but I felt that at the time it's not good governance to serve a search and seizure warrant not only on another department, but on the same department that you're working for. And I think the Constitution also tries to avoid that kind of situation. So I then spoke to General Zermatt, but at that point in time we didn't get any cooperation, so our hands were forced to get search and seizure warrants. At the time I asked General Zermatt, who was this is now September 2011, who was the head of the DPCI or the Hawks at the time.
And that is General Anwar Deramat.
General Anwar Deramat. I asked for his assistance because we were, in respect of the crime intelligence investigation, because we're now working from Gauteng out of head office, I reported directly to General Zermatt, not to General Matekate anymore. We then asked him, due to the sensitivity of the matter, whether he will be able to intervene and speak to the heads of crime intelligence, those departments, so that we can settle how we're going to get hold of the documentation that is needed for the criminal investigation. On the 13th of September 2011, there was a meeting at Oliver Tambo International Airport, and the meeting was attended by General Sabia, General Godfrey Labia, who is the current head of the crime of the DPSR, the Hawks. At the time, he was the head of detective, if I'm not mistaken, and therefore crime intelligence would have fallen under his command. We had General Major Vele Simon Machachi there. General Machachi was the acting head of crime intelligence at the time, and Colonel Faluna and myself. Now, during the meeting, an agreement was reached between the various heads of those different units within SABC, and that is basically General Dramat and General Labia, because they were the ultimate responsible persons for those units. And an agreement was reached that a person from crime intelligence would be appointed to facilitate the process. In other words, to make sure that we work within the boundaries of the Act, as well as making sure that we don't compromise any current projects or agents or anything like that. And in that regard, Major General Henkel was appointed to assist us in that process. Major General Henkel is from crime intelligence, and he then, together with a Brigadier van Graan, who was situated or who was from National Legal Services from SABS, they then assisted me with obtaining the documentation.
So was the search and seizure warrant executed?
The search and seizure warrant was never executed, was never necessary to execute the warrant, because there was an agreement reached between us, and a voluntary participation in the process took place. Because it's exactly why I approached General Dramat, to make sure that we don't have to go to that extreme extent to get documents from another department within SABS.
And through this facilitation process, did you receive any documents?
That is correct, Chair. I received documents from General Henkel, and as part of the information that we required were the information relating to agents, or seven agents that was appointed within the program, the crime intelligence, what I would call the 250 posts. It was a recruitment drive by crime intelligence in that period to...
What period, sir?
We're talking about the period of 2010, 2011. To attract people from outside to assist with, to strengthen crime intelligence with various skills, either IT skills or whatever the case may be. So that was the reason behind what we call the 250 recruitment process.
Well, this may be the right time to take the lunch adjournment. Let's continue after lunch. We'll resume at 2 o'clock. We adjourn.
Thank you, Chair.
All rise.